Welcome to another edition of Hacking TV. This week, live video turns a disturbing and important corner.
Even as Facebook says it wanted to have less news, the events in Dallas and Minnesota have made that virtually impossible.
So what happened in those hours after Philando Castile was shot by a white policeman while live streamed by his fiancée on Facebook Live?
And what do we make of the day before? Video of another African-American, Alton Sterling, being shot dead by the police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, went viral on the social network.
Then in Dallas, a sniper by the name of Micah Xavier Johnson, a war veteran, shot dead 5 policemen and grievously injured 2 more.
We're going to talk about all of that, and then we're going to look at the conventions, which are just 2 weeks away. How is online video going to play a role in this year's very unusual conventions?
I'm Steve Rosenbaum.
And I'm Saul Hansel.
And this is
Hacking TV.
Yeah, it's a somber, there's no doubt it's a somber edition of Hacking TV. We're going to really see if we can dig into this and see where it's taking us. But
we're in a world where we have too many guns, and it's an open question. Do we have too many or too few video cameras, live cell phone videos that now can broadcast live to everybody? But that's the world we're in.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting is if you read all of the various coverage, the New York Times, I thought, did a really spectacular job. And they said, the thing I liked in the headline was, live footage of the shootings forced Facebook to confront new role, which was right up top. Like, this was, I think we're at the very beginning of a new chapter that has some twists and turns that we can't even really imagine.
So we had, just to go over, how video played in this gruesome week, right? You had a lot of different configurations because we had so many damn shootings, right? So step one in, where was it? In St. Paul, you had a video that was shot and recorded, not live, but put up all over on social networks, and it went viral everywhere. Then, frighteningly, you had Philando Castile.
So the Alton Sterling video was in Baton Rouge. The first one wasn't live, but it was, and you could argue that one was more a video we've seen before. There's been lots of terrible video about conflicts between young black men and the police, and I'm beyond furious at that story. And he was selling CDs. There was I just don't understand how someone selling CDs in front of a thrift store becomes you're wrestling on the ground with them with a gun. But you could argue that wasn't new. That was terrible, but part of an ongoing long list of videos like that. The Castile video, on the other hand, was chilling on so many levels. I watched the whole thing.
I will confess to everybody, I did not have the stomach to watch the whole thing.
Goes through, it takes you on the, first of all, it would have been easy to make her a villain and say, what a terrible thing that she was choosing to videotape and broadcast live. But there isn't a moment of that feeling. She's very respectful to the officer. She's clearly, concerned about her fiance, and then, it appears he dies in front of her and on camera. But she continues to record for an enormous...
Not just record, but broadcast live.
Yeah, broadcast live for an incredibly long time. And if you haven't watched the whole thing, her solid, kind of unwavering need to document this and share it, for me, will go down in history as a pivotal change in this thing that we've all been calling kind of tongue in, for years now. We've thrown around the word citizen journalism, but I don't know that she thinks of herself as a citizen journalist. She was a participant or a victim or an observer or come up with the right word. But I mean, there was nothing objective and journalistic about what she was doing.
If when you're videoing your friend's birthday party or the baby shower, you're not a journalist, but you're doing something. And so people increasingly are doing that same thing, documenting maybe tense, unpleasant, dangerous situations as well as happy, friendly, and ordinary situations.
Now,
right?
the overwhelming irony of this last week is that Facebook just a week ago said we want to be out of the news business. Like we want to dial
Well,
down.
they said we want to be much less in the professionally published business. You could make an argument that what that woman did is not
No.
Castile, but his girlfriend did was exactly what Facebook wants to enable, which is individual self-publishing important things happening in their lives.
I absolutely disagree. I think this is a nightmare for Facebook. I think it is.
Well, it may well be a nightmare for Facebook, but I don't think it's a nightmare because they want to get out of the news business. I think it's a nightmare for some other reasons.
Well, I think that, but they made it quite clear, and if you've been watching your Facebook news feed over the last 10 days, I mean, the number of baby pictures and parties and vacation images and, has gone up exponentially, even as Facebook has ended up in the middle of this, this shooting story. And then, before, before what happened in Dallas, you could, it had a clear kind of moral line, which is, we have to talk about police and we have to talk about unarmed, but whatever. And then the NRA would be involved because he was armed, but he had a licensed firearm. But then the shooting of the police officers happened, and also live, also on Facebook. And that, the media likes telling a story with a narrative. And the narrative now is just essentially shit. Everything is really fucked up. Like, that's the narrative.
Well, all the weekend headlines were basically that. But, it'd be great if on this podcast we could solve the gun thing and the racial tension and all that stuff. I guess one question is, do we think that the ability of people to broadcast live what's happening from all these incidents is going to make the world better or worse?
So let me tell a parable. Let me tell a story of how strongly I felt about this historically, although I'm not sure I feel that way today. So a very long time ago in my career, we were just getting ready to start MTV Unfiltered, and we were still...
Remind people who aren't as old as we are what that was.
It was a show in which people called an 800 number, pitched a story. We FedExed them a camera because I didn't have cameras at home. And then we had them FedEx back the footage, but not the camera. And we watched the footage and then coached them to make stories that were first-person stories, that were citizen journalism before that phrase existed. And we were doing it on a segment called Viewers News on broadcast news, on BNN, Broadcast News Networks. And a woman called in, got a producer on the phone. We FedExed her a camera. I wasn't involved in the pitch of the story. I hadn't heard about it. A couple weeks go by, and the producer comes to me and says, you have to come in this edit room and look at this footage. And this was a woman in Syracuse, New York, who had had silicone breast implants. They both ruptured. She was debilitated by the way the silicone leached into her bloodstream, and she had both of her breasts removed. And the footage that she sent us was her walking into the bathroom, putting the camera on the mirror facing her, and then unbuttoning her dressing gown. And the image was very disturbing. They were scars, but there was nothing sexual or pornographic about it. It was just disturbing. And I did something that I've never done before. I actually called her and I said, listen, we've got this footage that you shot. Are you really sure you want us to put this on television? And she said, oh no, I want women to see this. And we did something we'd also never done. We sent a letter out to all our stations saying there's footage in this show that you may not want to find appropriate. You may want to look at it. And all of our stations, which were all the NBC stations in upstate New York and WPIX in New York City, aired it without an edit, without a blur, without anything.
And what kind of reaction did you get?
Overwhelmingly, thunderously positive.
I'll bet you that was more positive even then than it would have been if the reporter for the NBC station, even, Barbara Walters, as empathic as she could be, did the same thing because it's so clearly not exploited.
In fact, we talked about it afterwards. If I'd had a producer in the room and a camera crew in the room, even if she'd given permission, even if she said, no, I want to show you this, I would have fired them both. There would have, at that point, there would have been no words that could have been said that would have made it appropriate for a journalist to record what was an intimate image in her bathroom.
Right.
And I remember saying to people at the time, when real people can show you things that journalists aren't allowed to observe, this changes everything. And so, but I thought of it as a fundamentally positive outcome. And
in today's world, do you think let's just say, for example, a journalist was riding around in that car that got pulled over, or there was some reason. I don't know that anybody would have had the self-discipline to turn off the camera, but I think that people would say they should. You don't want to be watching someone die live on television.
Look, the problem that we now face, and why I'm really troubled by where we are, is, part of the purpose of journalists, in my mind, is they contextualize things, they make sure they're accurate, they fact check, they put them in context. And now you've got everyone at ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal chasing these live feeds, essentially trying to report on something that's already public. And I'll just give you as an example, there's a trend going on where there's this new game called Pokemon Go, and there's lots of kids playing it, and we'll talk about it on another show. But there was a big headline in the news that said, first accident, the guy was driving his car and he saw a Pokemon while he was driving, and he stopped the car on the highway, and there was this huge car accident. Total fiction. Total fiction. It was on Snopes. It was a totally made-up story. But it made its way all over the internet before anybody figured out that it was just, they found pictures of a car accident, they made up a story, they published it, everyone repeated it, because it fit the narrative of what you thought was happening. And so what...
But that, you know what? That doesn't have anything to do with live video, and that has been happening for the history of the planet. There have been fake stories, and certainly for the history of the internet. And good news organizations have learned that you need to fact check, and if you don't, you get burned.
So after the Castile video went up, Facebook took it down. And then a couple of hours later, they put it up with a warning saying there's graphic images in this video. Facebook is sticking by their story and saying that it was a glitch. It was a technical glitch, which is utter bullshit.
What do you think happened?
Somebody, there's no editorial team. There's no
There's a huge editorial team there.
It's the middle of the night, and this thing gets tagged as objectionable, and someone looks at it and sees a guy with blood on his shirt and goes, yeah, that's objectionable, and they take it down.
And what do you and if you were Mark and Cheryl, what do you think should have happened?
I think, I hope there are 100 meetings going on asking that question, because, you have to keep in mind, there's no algorithm, you can look for skin tone, and you can say, if there's something that looks like a body and it's got skin tone, that might be pornography. We ought to flag that. And you could have, I have a woman who worked for me. She's not with me anymore, but for the last year or so. And she said she worked at Ustream, and her job was to, review live streams. And she said it was so depressing that the what she saw people do to each other, and what people streamed was just so mind-numbingly depressing and violent and prejudicial and horrible that she literally couldn't stay there. And I just think that if the only way Facebook can stop objectionable live video is to have someone click the to have enough people report it with the red flag saying objectionable, then that is putting the genie back in the bottle. It is
So what would happen? So I'm going to take the point of view that I am not an absolutist, but I lean toward saying this phenomenon is good, and the goodness that comes from having more unfiltered access to stuff that human beings do is better, not worse, even though human beings are at a pretty regular pace revolting on any axis of revulsion that you can think of. Right? And I think that...
So there've already been on Periscope 2 live broadcast rapes that we know of.
That doesn't make me against... I mean, the rape is the bad part. Right?
But the question is it... I don't mean to use this word and take it how I mean it, but is it performance? Are they recording something that they would have done anyway, or are they, let's be salacious and broadcast?
So if the question is, does the presence of a camera amid human beings change behavior? I think that's settled law. Yes. Having a camera changes people's behavior, and a little bit sometimes for the better and sometimes way to the worse.
Hold on. So Saul, when you were at the New York Times,
yes,
how many times did you sit in an editorial meeting with a couple other really smart people and debate with great passion for an enormous amount of time a word or a phrase or how something was being characterized, or there's real intellectual firepower behind how do we tell that? And
well, I'm not saying that there isn't better and worse ways to do it. There are always better and worse ways. I'm saying
I'm saying something more horrible than that, which is unless Zuckerberg looks in the mirror and says, "Shit, I'm a news organization. I need to hire news people. I need to have news standards." So here's he said, they're going to only delete graphic video that is used to mock the victims. Now, tell me if I said to you at the New York Times, Saul, we're not going to write anything that mocks people in our, that's not an intellectual measure.
Facebook is not the New York Times. The New York Times
but I'm saying
has a brand that stands for things for reasons that make sense in its context. It's not a platform. I mean, it's a little bit of a platform.
I'm shocked that we don't agree on this.
I mean, I'm not saying Facebook shouldn't have any standards, but I'm saying that I think what you're implicit is, no, this is not a problem that is going to be solved neatly. I mean, the New York Times is a big sloppy thing in some sense, but it is, the 101st Airborne Division compared to Facebook, right? So there are 3 people who read every single word that gets published, at least. There are rules and standards and consistency in all those meetings you talked about. And so there is no way that a platform that can connect everybody to everybody is going to have anything close to that consistency. And thus, there's going to be sloppiness. There's whatever you think the right standard should be.
Okay,
it's not going to be properly enforced.
Okay, ready? So
yes.
I'm 18 years old.
Yes.
And I go and get a gun.
Yes.
And I put blanks in it.
Yes.
And I do a live performance art snuff film.
Yes.
And the person sitting in, Mountain View or wherever they are has no data about what's fake and what's real.
Yep.
Do they call the police? They've just seen someone murdered on live Facebook TV.
Well, yes, they call the police.
Okay, so what I'm telling you is when there are a million streams, which is what they're, I think people.
But I don't think that you should assume they're going to call the police. If they see it, they should call. It's like,
okay, so it happens. Everyone presses the red flag button.
Right.
Facebook's dashboard lights up. They look at it and go, "Oh my God, that's either really bad high school acting or it's a murder," and they call the police.
and that's because if I'm going to put on performance art like that, I either need to tell everybody that it's art. I mean, it's like the War of the Worlds, right? People were not crazy when they heard whatever it was, CBS or whatever, saying the Martians are coming, right? If the CBS tells you the Martians are coming and doesn't tell you it's a joke, then hide in the cyclone cellar.
I guess all I'm saying is this. I mean, so here, let's play out the things that we could do.
I don't understand.
So the first thing you could do.
What you're saying should happen.
So wait, the first thing you could do is have a delay. Have a 15 second, 30 second, 45 second, some delay.
Or 2 hour.
What?
Or like, wait, upload it and wait till somebody approves it. You could have affirmative.
That would be them abandoning live.
Right.
Which might happen.
That would be the extreme is because live in infinite quantity is ungovernable unless you charge people enough so you can have somebody who watches every stream as it comes in.
So originally, if you remember, Facebook Live was given just to celebrities.
Right.
And then, they kind of very quickly said, you know what? Set it free. Let's just and as recently as a week ago, 10 days ago, it was getting all kinds of positive buzz, and they were paying media companies, and it was all, citizen journalism and freedom, and we're all going to see. And now it's taken this remarkably ugly turn. And I guess what I'm just saying, we can move on. And
I want you to say what you think. So I'm going to say that I agree with your prediction that this is going to be very messy, that there's going to be lots of gross stuff that's going to get broadcast, that everybody upon reflection, or many people upon reflection, would think, we wish this wasn't broadcast. And I'm also going to say that net, the odds are that society is better when the good things, the neutral things, and the bad things all get added together.
And as the guy,
do you disagree with that?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, so tell me why do you think that the bad things are so bad that we should, in fact, put up one of those, a barrier that
I think that we are moving for the first time into this moment of ready, fire, aim, and I think you're going to see,
And what's bad about that?
I don't think a week is going to go by where you're not going to have some horrendously disturbing, we've now created this honey trap of audience for people that are disturbed in all kinds of ways to do bad things. But in any case, let me
just respond to that real quick, because I think that we've seen, that lots of people, but by no means everybody, learns what the more common scams are on the internet, right? So lots of people either ignore a lot of those chain emails or go to Snopes and understand that, once burned, twice shy. And so if we end up having lots of fake murders,
or real murders,
smart people,
or real murders,
or real, whatever it is, something happens, then people figure it out and they respond. But not that the response can be perfect, because it will be sloppy. But
if Facebook isn't hiring hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to get their arms around this, it's gonna run over them like a freight train, is what I'm saying.
Because someone's gonna say, "Oh my God, this really revolting, gross thing got broadcast," and Facebook is.
But look, but my concern is, and I want to get to the convention because we don't have a lot of time. My concern is that unwillingly, unknowingly, what Facebook's done is actually created an environment that encourages that kind of behavior. That it's like they've put up the soapbox in the town square and said, preach neo-Nazi. When somebody goes on Facebook Live and starts preaching neo-Nazi propaganda, are they going to take that down?
Well, look, I mean, YouTube has dealt with this for a decade.
but
Twitter deals with this.
it's different. Something is different here. It because everyone's connected and because it's live and because there's a sense that you might be witnessing something, it's got a repetitive viral component that YouTube just doesn't have. It's just different. And
I want to, as we flip into the convention, and I think this is going to be relevant to the convention. Let's just take stock of the fact that a year ago, YouTube, all of these things would have been recorded and uploaded on YouTube and shared, and in an incredibly short time, the center of live discussion, for better and for worse, has moved onto Facebook, and that is a remarkably quick shift in the behavior of tens of millions of people.
And anything Facebook, look, all I'm telling you is whoever they've got sitting in that room with their finger on the button saying stop that feed is going to have to be highly trained.
We want to talk to that person.
Yeah, right, intellectually gifted, and that person needs to be replicated 100 times and be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Well, I mean, YouTube's got to have thousands of people who do that.
But the difference is it doesn't have that spark plug multiplier effect. In any case, I'm all
right. So we
freaking
will watch
out.
this. There's no question that there is something new. And when we think about, I mean, what's going to happen in the conventions? There's a bunch of news announcements about what the professionals are doing, but I wouldn't be surprised if the most interesting stuff we're going to talk about in 2 weeks after the conventions is not the way the professionals tried to package the convention as show, but what thousands of delegates did broadcasting live from the floor.
I agree. I think
and the committee rooms and all those things.
So Twitter made an announcement that they're going to stream the CBSN feed, which I thought was remarkably uninteresting. Like, really? That's your big play?
You watched the CBSN feed?
Never seen it.
It's a definition of remarkably uninteresting.
Never seen it. Wouldn't even know how to find it.
It is. It's basically like Watchung Today. That was my daughter's elementary school had a little camera, and after the Pledge of Allegiance and before homeroom, some third grader would read the weather and the news, and it's basically 26-year-olds.
Now, meanwhile, The Daily Show is doing a great big Snapchat play, and that I think is interesting.
But I mean, it's certainly interesting. The Daily Show, if they do it right, can produce interesting things. The Daily Show is, by my calculation, 1,700 times more entertaining and more interesting and more informative than CBSN. But
look, to me, the two pieces here that I'd like to just knit together into a little bow, and then we can call it a night, and is, it's not like it was easy times for journalists before last week. And, we're doing this live and we're learning Snapchat and we're doing this, we're trying to figure it out, and it's all happening really fast. And now I just think, everybody, everyone who comes out of professional journalism is waking up this morning going, how do I do my job? Like,
I feel like it's right because there is the facts, and then there's all the context and the analysis and everything. And the thing, even compared to, say, Rodney King, right, which is the event that set all this in motion, 20 years ago?
Yep.
So for all of you, everybody else, so a guy gets beat up by the police, and somebody with like an old-fashioned video camera records it, sends it into TV stations. It gets played, and some people sort of say, is it authentic? Is it edited? Whatever. When you're broadcasting live, there is no question. I mean, there is question, right? But there is less question to some degree. Is this the whole story, right?
And in fact, I think,
the fact, right? I mean, you can't sit there and say, right? I mean, a certain number of cops in situations like that turn out to lie and say he reached for this or he did that, right? Or it's a matter of interpretation. Now, we all see.
Yeah, although to
exactly
be fair,
the gestures.
Without getting any further into the politics, I mean, despite the fact that there's been a whole lot of video that seemed on the surface to be, cops doing things they shouldn't have done, there hasn't been a lot of consequences. All right, well, listen, we're gonna continue this. I have a feeling this is a theme that isn't going to go away. Let's see what happens. Let's set the timer for the next 7 days and see if we can actually do a show where we go back to talking about Verizon and Netflix and and AT&T and not citizen journalism run amok. That would be great.
I sort of feel like our next 4 months are going to be running amok on many, sandbars of muck in many unexpected directions, but it's going to be at least till November before we demuck.
All right. Well, that is our episode. We will hack again a week from today, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Hack on.
Keep on hacking.